is a result of work that I had done previous to coming to FIU in 2010. I participated and actually was a consultant to the Latin American Caribbean governments for the development of the water balance. And of course, one of the countries that was involved was Cuba. And I also participated as a co-principal investigator in the Trade Convergence Climate Complex research program that studied the variability of climate in Latin America and the Caribbean in the area of the Trade Convergence Zone, of which Cuba is a part. And so through about approximately 10 years, we worked together with Cuban scientists, hydrologists, hydrogeologists, climatologists in both of these programs during my tenure as the regional hydrologist for Latin America and the Caribbean to UNESCO. So most of the people talk about, and I myself too, about the island of Cuba, but in reality Cuba is an archipelago, and as such it has various climatic and water resources conditions, and not just within the main island, but also in the islands that conform the archipelago. The total surface of the country is approximately 110 square kilometers, and it has a population at about 11.2 million. An interesting factor in terms of the population of Cuba is that there is a difference between the census that just took place 2 years ago in 2012 and the previous census 10 years out before in 2002, in the sense that the population of Cuba has diminished. It has not diminished by much, just the order of 10,000 persons, but nonetheless, this is a trend of interest for those that are involved in managing water resources. Some very quick statistics in terms of the water resources in Cuba. There are 652 watersheds and about 100 aquifer systems in Cuba. The annual freshwater withdrawal, it's approximately 7.56 billion cubic meters, and this is considered the average annual withdrawal calculated within a period of approximately 10 years. So it's like from 2000 to 2010. The terms of the country's water withdrawal, according to the statistics of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, Cuba stands in the 56th place from the top. And this is out of a sample of 176 countries. Within Cuba, the government had identified 9 watersheds that they called of international and interest, but mostly of national interest. These watershed has been selected mostly by their hydrographic and hydraulic potential. That is the amount of water that is available for agriculture or hydropower. It also, in these 9 watersheds that are identified here, and I don't know if the pointer has a little, no. Does it have a light? Yes. So we can see these watersheds are also in areas that you have major population, in particular here in the area close to Havana. So their importance is also related to population concentration. But these watersheds are also of national interest because of their strategic positioning. So in addressing, I will say, priorities existing today in Cuba, these are the watersheds that are mostly targeted. And you can see that in terms of population and also in terms of the size of these watersheds, it is very varied. You have watersheds that are over 9,000, over 9,000 square kilometers, and very small watersheds of the order of 200 square kilometers. In terms of the population also, it varies considerably, and so the selection of these watersheds is made based on a combination of elements. And we will discuss later down the road some characteristics of these watersheds. In terms of water resources, Cuba has a potential of about 83 billion cubic meters of water, of which 6.4 billion cubic meters are subsurface or groundwater and 31 billion surface waters. Of this water, in terms of availability, and by availability we refer to water resources that are accessible without major intervention or without major investment. And of that, there's a total of about 24 billion, of which 75% are surface, of course, the majority, and 25% are subsurface. In terms of the accessibility of water by provinces, and again, accessibility is water that is actually easy to use or is being used at the moment. And you can see that it also varies considerably, and you will have Santiago de Cuba, the province of Santiago de Cuba, and also Pinar del Rio among the two provinces that has the majority of the available or accessible surface water, while on the other hand, you see that in terms of groundwater, you will have provinces, a different set of, this is not working, a different set of provinces that, such as the province of Matanzas and the area around the capital La Habana that has the majority of the groundwater accessible. So this is an important element because the difference in accessibility between the groundwater and the surface water, geopolitically distributed, also set the stage as to what type of intervention or development you want to carry out. Now, in terms of the availability of water resources per person, in terms of billion meter cubic per person, you will also see that there is a lot of variability in terms of where do you have the concentration of bigger amounts of water. And you will see, for example, that in the two higher, I would say, columns here correspond to the province of Sancti Spiritus, followed by Camagüey, while on the other hand, if you exclude the little almost cube that is close to the bottom, which is only about 0.15 meter cubics per person, you will see that Holguín and Las Tunas are the provinces that have the less available resources per person. Now, there are a number of factors that influence the temporal and spatial distribution of water resources in a country. One of them is the topography of the country, and as many of you know, Cuba, its characteristic topography delineates the central cordillera that crosses from east to west and divides basically, it's like a continental divide of the island. And you also have that because of this topographic, The rivers are usually short and the watersheds are small in general in the country. About 85% of the rivers are less than 40 kilometers long. And that tells you, again, gives you information for what type of water resources you will be identifying. And most of the basins are also quite small, less than 200 square kilometers. Also, if you look at the topography, you will see that in the south central and eastern region of the major island, the mountain range reaches very close to the coast. Therefore, in these areas, you will expect to have rivers with very steep slopes, which means that they're not good for agriculture development, but have high hydropower potential. Another important element that defines the hydrology of a country is the climate. And Cuba, although the temperature per se doesn't change a lot throughout the year, still it has a variety of climate. And you can see here in this photo, we will see this is from Viñales, and you can see this is basically almost a cloud forest. And there are permanent clouds and also is a very moist and very lost, as you can see, vegetation. On the other hand, also in the main island, you will see semi-arid lands where the vegetation is almost nil, and which is very susceptible to droughts. And of course, in these areas, the topography also is a major issue in the sense that when there is not enough vegetation to retain the soil, usually the fertile soil has been wiped out completely, and you can see, perceive in this picture, there are vast areas basically with no vegetation at all. And then you have also in the coastal and subcoastal, you have what is referred to as xerophytic scrublands. Basically, you have cactus, which is a vegetation that you will find in desert. So you can see that the climatic zones in Cuba are quite different, and therefore, in terms of interventions, developing water resources, one has to take into consideration the climate. And in relation to water resources, the most important hydroclimatic variable is rainfall. Again, the distribution of rainfall throughout the main island is quite different. You see that the major concentrations of rainfall are in the east and west of the country, and also in the center-south. And at the same token, you will see that the areas of less precipitation or rainfall, which are depicted by the yellow and greenish color, are mostly in the northwest of the island. Now, an important region, and which has like a very big contrast, is the tip. Oh, it's working again. The tip here in the west of the country. Here in this area, you will find the driest part of Cuba in the province of Guantanamo, but at the same time, you find the wettest areas of Cuba in the province of Holguin. So this is a small area with very big climatic and rainfall contrast altogether in two neighboring provinces. The rainfall in Cuba, in average, is of the order of 800 millimeters, and so that will give you a range, an idea of the range of precipitation. Of course, there are differences in precipitation. There are differences at the daily, monthly, annual, but most important, there are the difference in precipitation in the decadal, I would say, time frame, because the climate in Cuba is modulated by the dipole in the Atlantic Ocean. And so the dipole in the Atlantic Ocean has a frequency of about 10 years, which in turn is related to the ENSO and so on. So I just showed this graph to demonstrate to you how the average rainfall can vary substantially from one decade to the other. If we look, for example, at the decade between, let's say a baseline between 1931 to 1960, and compare it to the same, and again, here we're talking about the watersheds of interest that I referred to earlier. And if you look at the same areas of interest, but now we are referring to the period 1961 to 2000, you will see that in the majority of the watersheds, there is a decrease in precipitation. And so these decadal variability that occur, and the data for the period 2000 to 2013 is not available yet. This is information provided by the National Institute of Water Resources, but we can see that there could be substantial variability. A variability of 367 millimeters is important. This is basically the average rainfall of arid countries. So this is also needs to be taken into account. This graph tries to give us an idea of the temporal and distribution of rainfall and temperatures. And this has been calculated as a baseline for over 50 years. And it goes from 1960 until 2010. And you can see